Hey everyone, it's Dina Calmetta here, and for today's news, I just wanted to bring you guys a quick update in what happened in the last 24 hours or so. And I want to start with what the hey happened with our elections last night, most particularly New York City. We're going from a Democratic city to a socialist mayor, and that is going to wreak havoc on the city. And not just on the city, but I believe for the United States. You know, I don't really talk about politics here a whole lot unless it has to do with Bible prophecy. And I believe that with this new election and this new change, we're looking more and more like Mystery Babylon in the Bible. So you may ask, well, what is Mystery Babylon? Well, Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 6 introduces the Mystery Babylon as the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. She is depicted as a woman clothed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls, holding a golden cup full of abominations and filthiness, riding a scarlet beast covered with blasphemous names, drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. And Revelation 18 portrays her downfall. The great city that ruled over the kings of the earth is destroyed in a single hour. Merchants and kings mourn her destruction because their source of luxury and trade has perished. Many have assumed that Mystery Babylon is the United States. It's actually going to be where the Antichrist sets up his kingdom. Now, I'm not saying that the new mayor is the Antichrist or anything like that, but could it be possible that New York City is Mystery Babylon? Mystery Babylon is going to represent the culmination of human rebellion and the seductive power of sin in its political, economic, and religious forms. This particular city is going to be the kingdom of the Antichrist, so to speak, and it's going to be in direct rebellion to God's word. And some of the things that this mayor has said, and I'm not going to go into it here because of YouTube, of course, but some of the things he has said is in direct rebellion to God's word as we believe as Christians. And it kind of fits perfectly with these end days. There is a prophet that had recently passed by the name of David Wilkerson, and he gave some pretty interesting prophecies about New York City. So when you have some time, I encourage you guys to go look those up. But yes, this is a very interesting development that we're seeing in our day and age. Because with the culmination of all the other prophecies in the Bible that are coming to pass, it fits perfectly with what Jesus said would happen in the times that we are now living in. So that's what I'm thinking in relation to this recent election, which makes it all more important for us as Christians to pray for our leaders. And that's actually biblical, you guys. Pray for those that are in office, that they make the right decisions, wise decisions, and of course, pray for our country. 2 Chronicles 7:14, God says, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So continue to pray for our country, continue to pray for our leaders, and most important, pray for their salvation, because that is number one on God's list, that not one shall perish. But that's where I'm at as far as these elections go and how I think it pertains to prophecy. So with America in mind, I have a piece here from Michael Schneider of the Most Important News, and he goes on to say, as grocery prices have risen, demand at food banks throughout the country has surged to very alarming levels. At the end of 2024, he wrote about a demand at food banks had risen to record levels all over the United States. Well, unfortunately, that demand has continued to rise in 2025, and now the government shutdown has shifted America's hunger crisis into overdrive. Millions of very hungry people are showing up at food banks looking for something to eat, and resources are being stretched to the limit. There is no area of the nation that is not being affected by this shutdown. For example, it is being reported that food banks in Iowa are experiencing record demand during this government shutdown. So what does record demand look like? Well, at one food bank in Iowa, they are serving about twice as many people as usual. And we are seeing similar things happen in other parts of the nation too. In Southwest Texas, one network of food banks is now serving nearly 170,000 people per week. When you suddenly go from 120,000 people per week to serving 170,000 people per week, it is going to be very difficult to have enough food for everyone. Often those at the end of the food bank lines end up with nothing, and that is why so many people are lining up early. On Monday, the line at one Bay Area food bank stretched all the way down the sidewalk. In Detroit, dozens of cars were lined around the block. In Colorado, approximately 100 vehicles were lined up at food banks in Greeley before the doors were even opened. On Monday here in Portland, there were people lining up to get food, but unfortunately, those that were waiting at the end of the line faced the possibility of ending up with nothing because there just wasn't enough food. And one of the reasons is because SNAP benefits have stopped because of the shutdown. But what about the middle class? Well, millions of formerly middle-class Americans are now in desperate need of food. And if you think that what we are facing is just because of the current government shutdown, that's only part of the problem. One food bank in Dayton, Ohio was experiencing a dramatic spike in demand long before the shutdown ever happened. So the shutdown just adds to the very fragile situation in our nation right now. Now let's talk about what's happening in our skies. According to ABC News, the U.S. Department of Transportation might be forced to shut down the airspace in certain parts of the country if the government shutdown continues into next week. You will see mass flight delays, you're going to see mass cancellations, and you may see certain parts of airspace completely closed because according to the Department of Transportation, they cannot manage it if they don't have air traffic controllers. Now, air traffic controllers are required to work without pay through the government shutdown, but vast numbers of them are choosing not to show up for work. Nearly 50% of all major air traffic control facilities face staffing shortages, according to the Federal Aviation Administration. So around 13,000 air traffic controllers are currently working without pay, but on Friday, the agency said that 80% of the New York area staff had called out. So if the government reopens, that'll solve what's happening with our air traffic. But still with food, prices are continuing to rise and global food supplies are just going to continue to get even tighter. Now, Revelation tells us that there will be famine. And not just in Revelation, but we're also told that in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Is America starving like other nations? No. But there's no denying that people that actually depend upon those benefits, legitimately depend upon them, are suffering. So I hope for their sakes that the government will open. But I would like to switch gears and bring you guys an update as it pertains to what is happening with Venezuela. As I mentioned on Monday, Venezuela reached out to Russia and China and asked for their help in regard to the United States. We knew that Russia said that they would back Venezuela, and now China is saying the same thing. Why is this a problem for the United States? Well, because China and Russia, of course, are nuclear nations, and so is the United States. But Russia, according to Newsweek, has suggested that it could send its most advanced hypersonic missiles to Venezuela. See, Russia is actually one of Venezuela's key military technical partners. They supply the country with nearly the entire range of weapons from small arms to aviation. The details and volumes of deliveries are classified, so the Americans might be in for a surprise. But according to Russia, they see no obstacles to providing Venezuela with their new systems, such as the Orunchink or the well-proven Caliber missiles. Russia said that no international commitments restrict Russia in this regard. Now, the Trump administration has deployed fighter jets, bombers, drones, biplanes, warships, and Marines to the Caribbean, citing efforts to curb illegal activities in those waters. These operations have resulted in more than a dozen strikes since September, with many of the alleged criminals having departed from Venezuela. And in response, the Venezuelan president has reportedly reached out to Russia, China, and Iran to request military assistance. So that's where we're at with Venezuela, Russia, and China in the United States. So a very tense situation. We'll see what happens in the weeks to come. In the meantime, the White House has confirmed Tuesday that President Trump will host the new Syrian president in Washington next week, marking the first ever visit by a Syrian leader to the White House. Now, you have to remember, this particular leader was on a list with, I believe, a bounty on his head at one point by the United States. So very interesting news here developing with Syria and the United States. So with that said, I just wanted to bring you guys a quick update today. Please do leave your comments below. I want to hear from you. Also, when you have some time, come and visit me on my social media pages as well as my website. And also subscribe to the channel so that you never miss a show. All right, everybody, until next time, thank you so much for watching. God bless and stay safe.